Go. Okay, welcome to this webinar on optimizing your online research footprint. Your presenters are Sharon Hitchcock, myself, librarian at the Webster University Geneva, Switzerland campus, and Holly Hubenschmidt, librarian at the Webster St. Louis campus. Thank you for joining us today. Our primary audience, our target audiences, are faculty researchers who wish to enhance their online discoverability, graduate students who are at a great place to start managing their profiles and papers as they're starting their careers and possibly their publications history, and also undergraduates, with the announcement in January 24th's Webster Today that Webster's Department of Biological Sciences has been selected to be part of the CPHAGES program, which has an undergraduate research curriculum. Undergraduate students should also be considering developing their online profiles. Okay, I will start by giving a brief review of the online research landscape globally. Numbers are growing. There are an estimated 1.5 million, well, of the 7 billion and counting world population, there's an estimated 1.5 million peer-reviewed academic papers published per year, and each year there's about a 3% increase in this. This pressure to publish may stress some researchers, peer reviewers, readers, etc. That's what all the screaming is about here. The predicted number of jobs also that someone will have during their work life seems to also be changing. The estimated number is between 5 and 11 jobs now, and your working space may be an office, your home, or on the road. Researchers collaborate globally. At Webster University, research requirements differ. National requirements for accreditation at some international campuses require academic research from faculty that is published and also retrievable. It may also be required that students write a thesis paper. This is the case for the Vienna campus in Austria, and I have here the Agency for Quality Assurance and Accreditation Austria logo, and at least is true for partially for the Geneva campus in Switzerland. And we have the Swiss Agency of Accreditation and Quality Assurance. In the United States, there has not been the same publishing pressure, but research is being recognized more and more. But whether required or not, your research should be recognized and appreciated, and also available. We are focusing on the online environment because online journal publishing is now the rule rather than the exception. In fact, more journals are switching to electronic publishing only as the dissemination of information is more timely there, and it can also contain linked and embedded material. We find that more and more paper journals are being stopped, and only the online journal access is being added. This is a significant change in publishing. Now, to enable the tracking of the digital information of online papers, DOIs, digital object identifiers, have been created as persistent identifications. When researching in the databases of Webster University Library, you will see the DOI prominently located on the article and in the citation. A DOI is an alphanumeric string assigned by a registration agency and the article's publisher, not the author. It is a persistent link to its location on the internet, so it's basically its address. Crossref, which I've noted here, is one of the organizations that create DOIs for new papers, and Crossref has added millions in the past 15 years through the publishers. The number of open source journals is also growing. They have become a popular alternative way of sharing your research that can bypass some of the time constraints of publishing in journals. Given this landscape of increasing population of people and papers, the pressure to publish, and the changing nature of online publishing, it's important to understand that you are unique, but your name is not. Not only that, but you may have different versions of your name. 1 or 2 initials, hyphenated last name. Perhaps you have a name change from when you marry, divorce and marry again. And if you work in several languages, you also have transliterated names, accents, various things to consider. This is an image that I made using some of the most common surnames from several different countries. The only transliterated one I have here is Lee. Here's an example of a Google Scholar search I did on myself. These are not my papers. I like to think that my last name is not too common, but there may be thousands and hundreds of thousands of people who share it. If I do a Google search, I come up with even more papers and a variety of things that are also not mine. I agree with some of my colleagues that creating a Google Scholar identification and profile is a great idea. You can list your faculty profile page as the website, and by keeping the data up to date, you can check the number of times your work is cited on the bar graph. Okay, this is an example of the bar graph from an unknown or unmentioned faculty member's profile. So it gives you citation indices, including the H-index, which I think Holly will mention later on. Now, another scholarly identifier, a scholar identifier, is the ORCID ID. And ORCID stands for Open Researcher and Contributor ID. It's a scholar identification that I frankly suggest all researchers adopt. There are currently 3,071,670 ORCID IDs created, and more publishers are suggesting that you provide your ORCID ID number when you submit a paper, and funding and grant organizations are also connecting to this ID. It can easily be used on your other online networks, and by having all of your papers listed, you ensure that your work is identified as uniquely yours. This is a screenshot of the metric statistics using an ORCID ID of a random researcher. And you can see that it notes the blogs when you're mentioned, Facebook, news, Twitter. It's quite interesting to follow. And as you can also link to your university, it's a good indication for them as well as what's happening and what other people see for the university.
Thanks, Sharon. This is Holly. I'll be taking over for a little while here, but I'm going to leave Sharon's microphone on. So if you want to chime in at all, please do so. Okay. And if our attendees have any questions, feel free to put them in the chat. We're monitoring that as well. So as a researcher, you exist in many places on the internet. And we've tried to group those places into several different categories because we're librarians and we like to group things into categories. So we're going to look at platforms that were specifically developed as networks for researchers. We'll look at research repositories. We will look at platforms for searching or managing research that have network applications. And then some of those widely adopted platforms that you're likely already a part of, but may not immediately come to mind when you think about your presence as a researcher. So first, those entities that were developed to be research networks. The two big ones are Academia.edu and ResearchGate. One thing to keep in mind with both of these entities is that they are for-profit groups. Even Academia.edu is not a .edu in the way we would traditionally think of that domain. It is not associated with the university. These are online platforms that are developed with heavy investment from different groups, different investors, and they are looking to make a profit for those investors. In a way, just as Facebook is. So it's not necessarily something that you want to avoid because of that reason, but there are things to be aware of if you choose to join Academia.edu, ResearchGate, or any other research network. There is the possibility you will likely see ads. There's some spamming sometimes involved. You may get some emails that you, or some connections, people reaching out to connect with you on these sites for commercial reasons, not necessarily just to collaborate with you as a researcher. And there is questions swirling about the investors that are putting their money in these groups. Even Angela Merkel has been questioning what kinds of biases does it introduce when you have someone suddenly put millions of dollars into one of these platforms. There's also been some legal trouble with publishers. Some people feel, and sometimes it's a little misleading once you get on these networks, that you can share your research. And you can, to a point. If you have published something and you have signed off on something with a publisher, you may not be able to freely share that article that was published in a journal. You can definitely share the link to it, the DOI, as Sharon mentioned, but you may not necessarily be able to share the entirety of the article. So be sure you are operating within the proper legal parameters that you signed off on. Now, it sounds like there's a lot of warnings associated with these types of networks, but the other question is, can you afford not to be on them? Both of these networks operate with millions of researchers participating in them. So if you do want some discoverability, if you want to look for collaborators, they might be the place where you should be. Just be aware that it's not as pure as something that perhaps maybe Academia.edu has a very pure sound to it, and these may not quite be as pure as they sound. There are some very interesting research repositories operating out there, and there are several different categories of repositories. There are disciplinary repositories like archive.org. This particular one is where researchers who are operating in physics and quantitative fields are sharing their research. Repositories typically do operate more as a hosting platform for research, but again, it does have to operate. If you are working with a publisher, you do have to take all that into consideration. And often publishers' contracts will include some kind of clause about you could put this article perhaps in a university repository. But disciplinary repositories are definitely something that you might want to consider looking at your field. A national repository is, I put up here the emblem for the Thai National Research Repository, which is trying to collect the research that is being done in Thailand. It's very exciting, and there are other national repositories as well. And then there are those institutional repositories. A lot of universities have a space where they really celebrate their research by trying to host it in one central place. Webster is working on it. We're hoping within the next year to year and a half we will have some announcements to make. So it is on the horizon.
That institutional repository may also be a good place to have the papers and dissertations of students as well.
Absolutely. So another area within this these research platforms are those platforms for searching or managing research that have a network application on the side. This includes a lot of what we think of as traditional library databases, things like Scopus, Web of Science, which Webster does not subscribe to, but it is a big one in the field, and PubMed. You can, these products are indexes for huge amounts of journal research, but they also include places where you can really do a very nice author profile. And if you choose to do this, you definitely want to be thinking about, as with all of these other platforms, if you're on Academia.edu, if you join a research repository, you want to be connecting that ORCID ID number to your profile so that across all of these platforms, people can find you. So at the bottom here of this screen, I've got a screenshot, it's probably a little small, from Scopus of an author. Neil deGrasse Tyson is definitely a physicist that is certainly beloved for his attempt to make astronomy and a lot of physics understandable to lay people. And this shows kind of his research output. This also mentions things like Sharon had highlighted some of the metrics that are associated with authors, and this highlights that as well, including his H index or his Hirsch index. And this is a number that is used to show how much your work is being cited by others. It's a way to show how influential your research is. In some cases, it's used for tenure. You cannot get tenure if your H index is below a certain number. So this is a way to monitor that as well. And if you've got your ORCID ID in there, people can easily find you, find your research, and see how your metrics are.
And you can see under the author name that there was a place to add your ORCID ID and add your information to your ORCID ID. Add to ORCID ID. Yep.
Yes,
right
just to the right.
Mm-hmm.
And really adding your ORCID ID is going to make that H index go up. As people can discover your research, they're more likely to cite your research. Closely related to these index database type products is something like Mendeley. It's a product for searching or managing research. It's a citation management tool. Webster has had RefWorks for a while, and this spring we are transitioning to Mendeley. Mendeley has a lot of benefits. Not only is it freely available, so it's something that's portable should a student graduate, leave the university, but want to take their research with them. But we have signed up for the institutional version as well, which gives us more capacity for storage for individuals and more sharing capabilities. If you want to create research groups, things like that, Mendeley is going to definitely be a lot more friendly. This is a profile of one of our faculty members here at the home campus, DJ Kaiser. He's set up his profile in Mendeley. You would attach your ORCID ID here, list your publications, and if you're listing those publications, again, as Sharon said, connect it with those DOIs. It just helps everything connect. So you're easier to find, your work is easier to discover. So if you choose to use Mendeley, if you choose to use any of these products, you should take a look and see, is there some type of profile where you would want to, flesh it out a little bit, associate yourself with Webster University, associate yourself with your numbers, your ID numbers that are really going to help people find you. And then the last category of these kind of platforms where researchers are found on the web are those platforms that are out there that you probably already belong to, but you may not necessarily think that these are things I should be linking within my research. LinkedIn, if you have a profile on LinkedIn, you should definitely be listing your publications with DOIs, attaching that ORCID ID. Google Scholar, this is a huge one, and down here at the bottom you can see it is so easy to set up a profile in Google Scholar. Just a few clicks, add some information, and again, add those identifying numbers so that you can be aligned across all of these platforms. And then there are your professional associations. For librarians, the American Library Association is one of the big ones. And once you're a member, there's an option to create a profile. And you want a better profile, a more substantial profile than just your name, your title, your institution. Put information in there about your area of expertise, your research interests, your publications. It's a way to be discovered. I feel like I keep harping on that, but that's really the point of this webinar, is to kind of understand this landscape and then figure out how to use it to your advantage as a researcher. And of course, we want to give credit where credit is due. So primarily the screenshots here have been logos, and we've attributed all of them. And now we want to open it up and see, do you have any questions? Feel free to type them in the chat box. We should also acknowledge that as we were developing this webinar, we got a lot of support from our librarian colleagues at the Vienna campus. Nicole Plotzer and Benjamin Fashion-Gray gave us a lot of fantastic input about the work they're doing and how they're supporting faculty.
Yes, and that was very helpful, and we appreciate that. Well, if there aren't any questions, then we would like to thank you again for listening in on this. And you can come to the library and talk to the librarians in St. Louis. You can also go to the Faculty Development Center, send them questions, so that you can get assistance with setting up your profile, getting an ORCID ID, making sure that you add the Webster University affiliation to your online profile. And we'd like to thank you very much.
Thank you. I'm going to stop the